where we left off last week. And then this week we're going to get into, well, I don't know if we'll get into Lord Brahma's answers this week, but this is the first verse where Lord Brahma starts to respond to his son Narada.
This is
So,
Canto 2, Chapter 5, Text 9,
yeah,
right?
text 9. Text 9. Brahmavacha samyak guru nikashiram vatsyate vichikitsitam yaraham korita samya bhagavad virya darshane. Lord Brahma said, my dear boy Narada, being merciful to all, including me, you have asked all these questions because I have been inspired to see into the prowess of the Almighty Personality of Godhead. So, purport by Srila Prabhupada. Brahmaji, being so questioned by Naradaji, congratulated him, for it is usual for the devotees to become very enthusiastic whenever they are questioned concerning the Almighty Personality of Godhead. That is the sign of a pure devotee of the Lord. Such discourses on the transcendental activities of the Lord purify the atmosphere in which such discussions are held, and the devotees thus become enlivened while answering such questions. It is purifying both for the questioners and for one who answers the questions. The pure devotees are not only satisfied by knowing everything about the Lord, but are also eager to broadcast information to others, for they want to see that the glories of the Lord are known to everyone. Thus, the devotee feels satisfied when such an opportunity is offered to him. This is the basic principle of missionary activity. So I'll repeat the verse. Lord Brahma said, my dear boy Narada, being merciful to all, including me, you have asked all these questions because I have been inspired to see into the prowess of the Almighty Personality of Godhead. So, one moment. So, one thing that sticks out to me in this verse, or one thing I was meditating on before this class started, was the attitude that Srila Prabhupada mentions that Lord Brahma has in this verse. And you see that he's very happy that Narada Muni is asking these questions to him. And, you know, in life, when there is a subject matter that we're passionate about, you know, and somebody asks you about something you like, naturally, you know, you want to share it with them when you're enthusiastic about it. And so the most enthusiastic topic is that topic that takes us above all the miseries and all the designations and all the crazy things in life. It transcends us beyond the modes of material nature. And so therefore, Lord Brahma is enthusiastic that Narada is asking about this, because not only is Narada Muni going to hear this and be enthusiastic to receive this message, but also Lord Brahma is enthusiastic to tell it. Because when two people come together to talk about Krishna, and you have somebody who wants to speak about it and somebody who wants to hear about it, Krishna makes himself present in that conversation. And it's pretty mystical in some ways how it happens. You know, both people become very enthusiastic. If you had this experience in spiritual life, and I'm sure all of you have, where you're talking to one of your devotee friends about something you read, you know, or about something you've realized, in Prabhupada's books, and naturally you feel very happy to discuss these topics. And the reason why this happiness occurs is because it's above the modes. It's transcendental to goodness, and it's on the pure platform, and it's reconnecting us with our original blissful nature. And in the same way, you notice people taking pleasure in other topics. Like if people sit and they gossip about somebody else for an hour, um, naturally, you notice after that, you might get some pleasure in the beginning, but you feel kind of like, ugh, like after it doesn't have the same effect. You just feel kind of gross. And so this is because these topics are in the modes. But the Krishna conscious topics are the most enlivening topics. And then also, another wonderful thing about this is that not only is this discussion for them, but whenever two devotees come together and discuss, also it creates opportunity for others to hear about these activities. So that's another reason why Lord Brahma is so enthusiastic here. And I've had the experience before talking with two devotees, and maybe we're talking about something we read about Krishna, or talking about experience that we had during japa, and then somebody else comes and sits down and they listen, and they become enlivened, and then they add to and then they learn something, and they add to their realization. So it's like this thing that just kind of keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And we see this throughout the Bhagavatam. When Shukadev Goswami was speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, they didn't just speak alone, but there are many great sages and great saints that also wanted to sit down, and they were also relishing the Shrimad Bhagavatam and its topics. And so, like the verse I mentioned last week in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that this happens, when his two devotees come together, they derive great satisfaction and bliss from enlightening one another and conversing about him. So this is the first thing that's going on. Before Brahma gets into it, he's feeling very blissful and very happy and very enthusiastic. And in the same way, when this meeting is done and this class is over, I'm sure many of you will also feel very blissful and enlivened and enthusiastic, like I do every week as well. So it's pretty short purport, but are there any other comments or anything else that stuck out to you guys reading this? Yes, Amy?
Just the purity, like the fact that this attitude that he has of enthusiasm when they're being questioned concerning the Almighty Personality of Godhead, that is a sign of a pure devotee of the Lord, because you get naturally, I guess, blissful, happy, or giddy, or just to know that you're gonna speak about the Lord, or that you're just gonna you get a little anxious, like for example, I had some cookies that I was going to eat maybe during the class, but I ate them all before the the class because I was so happy to get to the class already. And there was some tech issues, but I guess it called to my attention that a sign of noticing a pure devotee is the interest and the enthusiasm that the devotee has to listen or participate in learning pastimes about the Lord.
Yeah, the enthusiasm. And, and what you're saying is calling to my attention the experience I had, like before I started reading Bhagavatam. Um, I was eating prasadam with the devotees, although I didn't realize at the time it was prasadam. I thought I was just, eating lunch. And these two people were sitting in front of me. I had no idea who they were, but I was eavesdropping on their conversation and listening in, and they were talking about Krishna. And they were just saying, like how wonderful Krishna is, and how he's showing up in their life, and how they're seeing them here and there. And then he said, you know, when you just start talking about Krishna, you just feel this happiness that's beyond anything else. And then he gets up to go to class. He says, I don't want to go to class. I'd rather sit and I'd rather talk about Krishna. And I was thinking, like, really? Like, can it be that great? You know? And this, you know, this is before anything. And so one of the things that sticks out to me is that, you know, you can't really fully explain this. Krishna consciousness is something that you have to experience. And you don't necessarily start to experience it unless you know, jump right on in. And then you're like, okay, yeah, now I understand what you're talking about. Just like, you know, I didn't get it before I started reading with another devotee. And I was like, oh wow, this is actually really blissful. But you know, logically, because sometimes my mind wants to think very logically I couldn't understand it. But it was like that thing that I had to, like, once I jumped into it, then I was like, okay, I understand what those two guys were talking about. Then you get that enthusiasm and that ecstasy. So anybody else have any other?
Hare Krishna. I just wanted to add the relationship of like the father son here, where the father is saying is humbling himself and saying to his son, you know, you are being merciful, and, but although at the same time he's saying you've asked all these questions because I have been inspired to see into the prowess of the Almighty Personality of Godhead. So you know he has the knowledge and he's going to share it because his son asked him. But the way he answers his son, he puts himself he makes himself humble in his manner of answering to his son, which I find very interesting, having you know, children that, you know, very often relationships are difficult, but very often the parent is willing to do that, to be to humble themselves for their children, because you know, after all, the children are the future.
Right, yeah, you don't see that very often in the material world, right? The parent humbling themselves before the child.
Yeah,
And
no, no, no. It's all fighting and discipline and yeah.
yeah,
It's not
fighting
like, oh,
the
thank you for asking me questions that are difficult to answer. You know, very few parents say that, but you know, yeah.
yeah, it's the opposite. I'm happy you pointed that out, Yamuna, because it shows the attitude of the devotees. And it was making me realize a point that I had read yesterday. I'm going through first canto again, and it was talking about how the devotees of the Lord, they're humble and they're free of self-aggrandizement. And it said, for one who engages in pure devotional service and is free of self-aggrandizement, you know, they can enter into the spiritual world. And as I go through Bhagavatam again and again, sometimes I find myself, you know, uncovering these deeper layers and not necessarily just focusing on the words because I did that the first time through, but I'm also now seeing the attitudes of the devotees and how they're behaving with each other and how they're interacting. And you know, it's really something I didn't catch before in the very beginning. You know, I was just trying to get like the knowledge, like what does it say? But now, you know, I'm noticing these patterns of the devotees of the Lord. They're always humble. They're never boasting. They're never bragging about their accomplishments. You know, and you know, they're always very happy to discuss these topics. They don't have low self-esteem, but at the same time, you know, they understand that all of their knowledge is ultimately coming for Krishna, so they consider it like a great privilege to be able to like discuss these things. And so yeah, thank you for bringing that up here. Abby, do you have something you want to
No, not right now.
add? Okay, of course. Um, I do want to throw this out there that even though we started a little late, I can't really stay much past 6. So if that's all right, apologize for that. Okay, so or well, 6 my time. I think it would be 7 for you guys because
Yes,
I'm an hour
that's fine.
hour behind. Okay.
So today
So
we'll do 45 minutes. It's fine.
okay.
We'll fix the technical problem for next week.
Like it happens. So Yumina, would you like to do 10?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
Okay. Nanritam tavata chapi yatamam prabhavishi boho avichnaya paramata etavat tvam yatohi me. Whatever you have spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my powerful activities. Now, this is the purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. The frog in the well logic illustrates that a frog residing in the atmosphere and boundary of a well cannot imagine the length and breadth of the gigantic ocean. Such a frog, when informed of the gigantic length and breadth of the ocean, first of all does not believe that there is such an ocean, and if someone assures him that factually there is such a thing, the frog then begins to measure it by imagination by means of pumping its belly as far as possible, with the result that the tiny abdomen of the frog bursts and the poor frog dies without any experience of the actual ocean. Similarly, the materialist scientists also want to challenge the inconceivable potency of the Lord by measuring him with their frog-like brains and their scientific achievements. But at the end, they simply die unsuccessfully, like the frog. Sometimes a materially powerful man is accepted as God or the incarnation of God without any knowledge of the factual God. Such a material assessment may be gradually extended, and the attempt may reach to the highest limit of Brahmaji, who is the topmost living being within the universe and has a duration of life unimaginable to the material scientist. As we get information from the most authentic book of knowledge, the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, verse 17, Brahmaji's one day and night is calculated to be some hundreds of thousands of years on our planet. This long duration of life may not be believed by the frog in the well, but persons who have a realization of the truth mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita accept the existence of a great personality who creates the variegatedness of the complete universe. It is understood from the revealed scriptures that the Brahmaji of this universe is younger than all the other Brahmas and in charge of the many, many universes beyond this, but none of them can be equal to the personality of Godhead. Naradaji is one of the liberated souls, and after his liberation he was known as Narada. Otherwise, before his liberation, he was simply a son of a maid servant. The questions may be asked why Naradaji was not aware of the Supreme Lord and why he misconceived Brahmaji to be the Supreme Lord, although factually he was not. A liberated soul is never bewildered by such a mistaken idea, so why did Naradaji ask all those questions like an ordinary man with a poor fund of knowledge? There was such a bewilderment in Arjuna also, although he is eternally the associate of the Lord. Such bewilderment in Arjuna or in Narada takes place by the will of the Lord so that other non-liberated persons may realize the truth and knowledge of the Lord. The doubt arising in the mind of Narada about Brahmaji's becoming all-powerful is a lesson for the frogs in the well, that they may not be bewildered in misconceiving the identity of the personality of Godhead, even by comparison to a personality like Brahma. So what to speak of ordinary men who falsely pose themselves as God or an incarnation of God? the Supreme Lord is always the Supreme. And as we have tried to establish many times in these purports, no living being, even up to the standard of Brahma, can claim to be one with the Lord. One should not be misled when people worship a great man as God after his death as a matter of hero worship. There were many kings like Lord Ramachandra, the king of Ayodhya. None of them are, but none of them are mentioned as God in the revealed scriptures. To be a good king is not necessarily the qualification for being Lord Rama, but to be a great personality like Krishna is the qualification for being the personality of Godhead. If we scrutinize the characters who took part in the battle of Kurukshetra, we may find that Maharaja Yudhishthira was no less a pious king than Lord Ramachandra, and by character, study Maharaja Yudhishthira was a better moralist than Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna asked Maharaja Yudhishthira to lie, but Maharaja Yudhishthira protested. But that does not mean that Maharaja Yudhishthira could be equal to Lord Ramachandra or Lord Krishna. The great authorities have estimated Maharaja Yudhishthira to be a pious man, but they have accepted Lord Rama or Krishna as the personality of Godhead. The Lord is therefore a different identity in all circumstances, and no idea of anthropomorphism can be applied to him. The Lord is always the Lord. A common living being can never be equal to him. Wow. Let's go back, read the translation again. Whatever you have spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, one who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my powerful activities. So this was an excellent purport, the whole idea of the frog in the well. This whole idea that there are things that we just simply can't understand. It's beyond our experience. So we go back to the Shraddha, where we have to accept some things because we can't understand without accepting some of these things that we can't understand. He says here that what you have spoken about me is not false, because you may believe that, well, how can this be true? But until you've had the experience, you just can't understand. It's like the frog can't understand about the ocean. It's just too much for him. Even when he tries to understand, he tries to expand his belly to encompass the ocean or something like that, and it just it just explodes. He just can't. It's just beyond his understanding. So I hope it's not beyond our understanding, because that's what we're here for. We're here to study and to try to understand. But we have to beware not to follow the false prophets, the people who say, well, since you don't understand, take my word for it. I am, the representative that you're looking for, or what I have to say is much more important, or equally important, or more important than what you're reading in this other literature that you're, as it says here, beware of that. Beware of that. It's not just enough to seem like you're holy, to be holy. Right? It's like Gurudev often mentions that many devotees will try to put so much emotion into what they're doing, into their singing or whatever, but unless they really understand what they're doing, it's like a false it's just like a false show, and until you really understand, so we have to be careful about that. We have to be careful about following those who pretend to be enlightened but who are not, or who pretend to be actually holy and like the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but are not. And we have to also be careful of controlling ourselves and not making ourselves appear to be that way, to remember our own humility, and and to accept some of these things that we can't understand just on faith and shraddha, because as we continue, and we will have experiences that will make it all come together for us, as Mother Lavanga mentioned. Until we start having the experience, we can't understand the experience. So we're not even sure if we're having it or not. And that's one of the questions that Guru Dev often gets asked is, how do I know if I'm progressing in Krishna consciousness, or and because uh, we have to be careful. Our own ego may tend to put us up higher than we are. We have to remember our humility. We are devotees, and we are humble, and we are here to learn, and we don't understand everything, but because it comes in our tradition, we accept with Shraddha, and that's one of the topics that Guru Dev has promised to talk about in the class that he's going to give in a couple of weeks. So with that, I'm going to open up for the next person to make some comments. Lavanga?
Go ahead, Amy or Abby. One of you have something?
I was trying to see if Abby wanted to say something because I already spoke first, so maybe she wants to say something first.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, I just don't have anything. I'm sorry.
No. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Because like for me, like I always have something to say, but I really appreciate, like if somebody else has something to say, like I never want to take away from anybody else, because I learn just as, I'm learning all the time. And sometimes the person that doesn't speak up, usually they have something really profound. So I want to make sure that that's never missed. But along with hold on one second, guys. Sorry. I had to set my phone down for a minute. So with what Yamuna was saying, um, and about this frog in the well that Prabhupada had mentioned in this purport. Yes, it illustrates that we can't understand Krishna by our own endeavor. We can't understand these topics by our own endeavor. And even Brahma was pointing out that one can be bewildered, they can think maybe he's all in all. Because Krishna doesn't he's not the type of person to be come down and be like, I'm the all in all, I'm this, worship me and don't look at anything else, because Krishna is not he's not partial. He's not partial to any living entity. We all have our certain desire, we all have our individual desires. So Krishna, he reciprocates with one according to their level of surrender. So it's like if I try to understand Yamuna, or I try to understand Amy, or I try to understand Abby, just by looking at them, or social media stalking them, or something like that, I can get some idea. But if I really want to know them, I have to first have the desire, and then they also have to be willing to reciprocate and to let me know them. And so Krishna, being a person, he's not just going to come and reveal every aspect of himself to everyone. And so therefore we can see that it's impossible to understand him by our own endeavor, because even by our own endeavor alone, it's impossible to understand any other person in this material world. But with that said, in the process of Krishna consciousness, when when one has the desire to understand Krishna, like Narada here, he has the desire to understand whom Brahma is performing his austerities to. He's sensing that there's something higher. You can think of it like this, like when the sun is coming up in the morning. And maybe you don't fully see the sun at first. But when the sun is rising, and I'm sure some of you have experienced this, first it's dark. And then you start to hear birds chirping, you know? And then the sky gets a little blue. And then you see the sky over in the east starts to turn a little orange, a little pink. And then later, you see the sunrise. But you don't fully need to see the sun come up to know that it's rising. So there's symptoms that the sun is rising. So in this way, even though Krishna can't be understood, by our own endeavor, or what's behind Lord Brahmaji, to put it in the context of this verse, can't be understood by one's own endeavor. Like Prabhupada gave that example, the frog in the well. We try and we just won't get anywhere. With that said, going through the proper process, having that desire, approaching somebody who knows, having the right attitude, Krishna slowly starts to reveal himself, and you get to the point that, okay, maybe you haven't seen Krishna appear personally in front of you, and you don't fully understand Krishna. Nobody can fully 100% understand Krishna at all times, because then you'd be equal to Krishna if you could, But still, you can have that thing where you're like, okay, Krishna doesn't necessarily need to be right here standing in front of me for me to know he's real. Just like, I don't necessarily need to see the sun to know that it's coming. And so, but like Yamuna said, we have to be very careful that, in our process of Krishna consciousness, not completely understanding that we also don't become bewildered by other people who have ego and are just like, well, you don't understand. Well, then I'm going to give you the real thing. Because that's also the wonderful thing about Srimad Bhagavatam, is that not only does it give you the real thing, but it gives you qualifications of a person that you can hear from that knows the real thing. So the Srimad Bhagavatam kicks out all cheating. And for one who pays attention to it, one's not bewildered. But in the very beginning of life, the very beginning of spiritual life, Prabhupada explains that we start off on this Kanishta Adhikari platform. And for a Kanishta Adhikari, you don't have a whole lot of knowledge about the Shastra yet, and you don't have a whole lot of faith. So you experience maybe some happiness when you're in the temple, seeing the deity or doing your service or with the devotees. But when you go off, you can be easily bewildered by somebody else whose intentions maybe aren't so good. So that also you have to watch for that. And that's how kind of we all start off. But as we progress, you get to the Madhyama level where you can make distinctions, and then later, we can ultimately rise to the Uttama Adhikari platform. But I'm not going to say a whole lot about that because that's a class in itself. But I just wanted to mention that because Yamuna had said, about how we have to have faith, and we also had to be careful that we don't hear from wrong sources. But and then also considering this analogy of the frog, that we don't just think that we can do this, by our own endeavor or our own intent. So that's my thoughts. And is there anything else anybody would like to add on
Amy?
that? Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to add that when I love the frog in the well logic, I really, really enjoy it because I could just like, I think I've seen also cartoon drawings of the frog in the well by other ISKCON accounts on Facebook. And it's very interesting because to me, what that reminds me of is that our like God is it reminds me of the universal form of Krishna and how when Arjuna asked, okay, if you're really the Lord, let me please see your universal form. And when he shows it to him, but before he shows it to him, he has to give him the spiritual sight so that he could actually understand the spiritual universal form. And it reminds me that we have imperfect senses, and we have limited, contaminated, and imperfect senses, and with our limitations we can't perceive or understand the wholeness of the Lord, and because it's infinite. So you can be here studying and learning, and it's going to be very interesting, and you're always going to want more, and you're always going to love more of the Lord. And I guess that's the whole point of trying to know about the Lord. But you'll never finish. You'll never really finish learning about the Lord, because he's like infinite, and with our limited senses and our limited, we're just like frogs in the well, because we can't really, no matter what we do, we're not going to be able to, by our own senses or by our own understanding, be able to fully understand Lord Krishna. And I think every time everybody says something about faith, it reminds me of the two types of faith, which is Shastrika and Laukika, I think it is, Shraddha. And the Laukika is kind of like the faith that is innate, the one we naturally possess, which is a little bit more naive than the Shastrika, because the Shastrika is the one that kind of like cements the faith in a real conviction of what what you already know about the Lord. And just wanted to make those two comments, and that's it. Thank
Did
you.
you get that from Param Prabhu?
Yeah, yes. From the course, of course, I'm taking but I think it was Bhakti Shastri course.
Bhakti Shastri, yes.
No, but I also read it in is it Gaura Goswami, A Society Without Envy?
Gaur Govinda Swami?
Yes. Yes,
Okay, yeah,
yes,
yeah.
Gaura Govinda Swami, yes, yes. And he speaks about what you spoke before also, Kanishta Adhikari, Madhya Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari. And he
Yeah.
speaks about the qualities and how like where you're at. For example, if you're a beginner and what you spoke about the Kanishta Adhikaris, and then the Madhya Adhikari had a different quality that you could tell, like what they do when people offend them and things like that, and how you can tell that the person is a Madhya Adhikari. And then the other Uttama Adhikari is like a pure devotee. We
Yeah.
should
So,
all aspire to get there, but it's obviously just like a goal.
but the journey on the way is, it's a very happy one, a very blissful one. And along with the Kanisha Madhya and Uttamadikari, if you guys are interested in uh learning more about that, there's a purport in the Nectar of Instruction where Prabhupada explains in more detail the levels of the three. So you can go there, and it's much better than what I did. But if I get into it, then we're gonna be here for another hour. So all right, so what time do we have?
Like 4 minutes to 7,
Like
or 6
4 minutes to
in your case.
7. Okay. So maybe we can, Gimura, do you have any announcements? I know in 2 weeks we have questions and answers, but
Yes. We've pushed the date back now to April 14th, because next week on the 7th I won't be able to attend, and I would like to be there. I have some questions. I'm going to repeat those questions about devotional service and personal needs. If you remember, the answer never got published. And also, he said he would speak about Shraddha. So if you have questions for Guru Maharaja, please send them or send them next week, you know, because there will be another Srimad Bhagavatam class next week, even though I won't be here. Okay? All right?
And speaking of Lord Brahma, I just submitted one to Manath Maharaj about Lord Brahma today. So
Okay, good.
and
So,
and like Lord Brahma becomes very happy to hear Narada Muni's questions in the same way Manath Maharaj is very ecstatic to also get our questions. So.
yes, yes. And
I'm reading so that I can better ask questions that are worthwhile for everybody, I guess. So if I find that I have many questions, I'll start posting some of them so that
okay.
but I'll
Well,
have a
he's
good
very
bunch.
fast about responding to questions. So if
Yes.
you post questions right now, he might go ahead and answer them. And, you know, we save something for the class, you know, send it like, you know, a few days before, less than a week before. So saying, oh, this is for the class. But you can send him questions anytime. And he's always happy to make his own little recordings at his own convenience to answer the questions or simply to write something in the chat and you know so those are the things that are going on right now. That's the activity that we have here. He gave a class at for Rama Navami, which was the recording. There was a lot of people complaining that they couldn't really hear the people who listened from home, and I think maybe these classes they need to be done by Zoom also, because if the devotees in Santo Domingo want to participate, they were all sitting there like in a classroom, like waiting to participate, but they couldn't hear, and it didn't work out. So all of these little technical problems we're going to work on fixing up so that we can have these sessions with good quality always. Okay? We're working on it. So anybody has anything they can do, I can help out some, but I don't really have too much knowledge. So I'm going to write the note to the other devotee to see, you know, what he can do. But if, whoever has skills, you know, please volunteer. Okay. So having said that, Lavanga,
All right.
would you?
Well, I think we could probably end here. Mara just I think wants me to stay on for 5 minutes afterwards. But
Yes, please. Yes, please. If Yamuna,
oh,
Elavanga, Mataji can stay
I can do
for
that.
5-10 minutes, something technical. And yes, I'm really looking forward to meet all of you in 2 weeks. And yeah, remember that I am not difficult to access. If somebody wants to write, is welcome to write. If someone wants to talk to me in Zoom, even alone, that's not, no problem. I am, if you let me talk about Krishna 24 hours a day, I'm happy. Okay, so thank you very much, and everybody can exit, and we remain with Yamuna Lavanga only. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you for your service, and thank you, Guru Maharaj. My respects, my obeisances.
My
Hare
obeisance is
Krishna, Bhakti Nayame, Hare Krishna.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
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 Manonatha Maharaja ki jai.
Jai.
See you next week.
So,
Have we stopped the recording? You can stop the recording now.
right, yeah, yes, just a second, stop record. And I'd also